Yo, people, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video. This is your Bayern Chelsea preview. Obviously, over the weekend, we dropped two big points. And for me, I don't even want to go too much into that game. We came back from 1-0 down, leading 2-1, literally lost that game in the last minute. There's been pretty much a lot of blame being going around, honestly, from Tosin, to the center backs, to Garnacho, falling asleep at the back post, to the potential, offside call that wasn't given. Now we've seen different angles of Tosin potentially getting pushed in the back, and that just reminds you of the whole Badiashile situation with Aston Villa, I believe, under Pochettino. But look, it is what it is. The league was going to get even with us after the whole Fulham situation. Look, once they decided to let people off for the week after making the right call, bro, you just saw the writing on the wall. So it is what it is. We're still unbeaten, 8 points out of 12. Could have been a lot worse. Could absolutely be a lot better, sitting on 10 points. But it is what it is. We just keep it moving. We have a big game against Bayern tomorrow on Wednesday, and it's going to be very nice, to be back in the Champions League after 2 years. Since the last time we were in the Champions League, I believe we only have about 3 players in this squad that have at least experienced that atmosphere. I think Chalobah, I believe, well, technically 4. Chalobah, Fofana, Reece James, obviously, and Cucurella, and then Enzo. So that's 5 people, actually. So that's 5. When you think of Enzo Fernandez, you think of Cucurella. Chalobah, who's going to play again. That's already 3. 3 kind of first team members that have had that experience, and then you add Reece James, who could potentially start this game as well. So 4 out of your starters have been here before. They've done it. So it's not too bad, right? It's not like you're coming in to the Champions League for the first time and every single player in your team has not had that experience. I think we're going to be fine. Bayern are obviously going to be the favorites. Same against PSG. When we come against these big teams, it's always going to be how we have to prove ourselves, right? So in this game at the Allianz Arena, look, we've won the Champions League there. We have big history there, and Maresca will be a very smart man. Yes, different type of scenario, but you could still kind of instill that belief in the team. Chelsea, when they go to the Allianz Arena, regardless of the team, regardless of who it is, it's the history of this team to put in a performance. So against Bayern Munich, you just get these guys up for that game. And you got to show cojones at the end of the day. We played PSG. We were in the underdogs. Came out, and we did what we had to do. And, from this Bayern team, like, I haven't really watched Bayern Munich, but just names like Harry Kane, Luis Diaz, Michael Olise, Goretzka, now Nicholas Jackson. You're looking at Kimmich. They signed Ta over the summer. Is it going to be Manuel Neuer and go? You're looking at some of these names, Gnabry, and you're like, yo, how do Chelsea, come into this game and potentially get a result? I mean, it would be bad if we went to Munich and then we just got slaughtered. I mean, it just would be not the nicest welcome backs into the Champions League, right? So, and then we have United over the weekend. You kind of want to take something away from Germany. You go into that United game a bit confident. United, another team, we need to kind of deal with on a certain level, but that's going to be later on, for another time. But the focus is on Bayern. And there's been a lot of, conversations about Chalobah, Tosin, and, the schoolboy defending we saw against Brentford. And, Brentford have always been that team that have been our bogey team, especially away from home. Since they've been in the league, I don't think we have beaten them over there, and yes, they've lost Mbumo, they've lost their manager, certain teams regardless of if you have the better players, they always want it more than you. Brentford at home, they also know it's a London derby, so they're always going to give everything to get a result. And if you have a bogey team, sometimes, man, it just happens. We're bound to have some of these performances against your Brentfords. You're bound to have teams who get a goal and then they just sit back and soak up absolute pressure, and then they just try to just kind of rely on their defensive, strength and stability, and they just don't give you any space. So, look, it's one of those games where I'm very disappointed. Yeah, we didn't win, but this Bayern game is going to be a whole lot different than, Brentford. And this game gives another opportunity for Chalobah and Tosin to put some of these wrongs right. You got to be a bit more, solid. And you, like, especially Tosin, them 2 goals that we've conceded against Fulham. Well, technically Fulham didn't count, but it's been the same actions. Cut in and the players shoot it. And if you know the player is right-footed, you got to show them on the left. You keep making them come onto their right foot, they're going to punish you. So Tosin, that's something he has to pick up on, something he has to improve on, because, bro, we're going to be conceding a lot of goals if that keeps happening. Players are just going to cut in on their strongest foot and then shoot. So Tosin, you got to show them on the outside. If they're right-footed, show them on the outside. If they're left-footed, show them on the inside. And if they score with their weaker foot, then, hey, props to that player. You understand what I mean? Chalobah, I know he has his moments where he could just feel very rash in certain tackles, trying to come in and nick the ball very early. Against this Bayern team, we have to get everything spot on. So that defensive line, Tosin, Chalobah, Sanchez, these guys have to be on it, and they have to play with confidence. Like, go in there and remember, you belong here. When you start these games off on the wrong foot and you're nervous, it's going to be a problem. It's just going to literally filter. It's going to filter throughout the team, and everyone's going to be anxious. Everyone's going to be afraid. Go playing against this Bayern team, show chest, be confident, play your game. And it all comes down from Maresca as well. You have to give these guys the belief that, you know what, it's okay if you make one mistake, but recover from that. Don't just let that kind of, be the entirety of, all the actions you do in the 90 minutes. You're going to make a mistake. Shit happens. Just play your game, be confident, and we're good. So we're just going to look at my predicted starting 11 for this game. And we'll see what I think Maresca might go with. Again, if he doesn't, great. But this is what I think he's going to go with. I think he's going to go with the same team from the Club World Cup. And I think it'll be a smart thing to do. Esteval wasn't available for that Prem game. He just came back from illness. You're tempted to throw Esteval into this game. But again, he's one of those guys. I want him to be managed properly. Esteval is one of our outlets. And it's not a bad thing to bring Esteval into this game, second half. You have Garnacho, who you can also bring in second half. In this game, I want to see Maresca actually have a striker on the bench. Gil should be an option coming off the bench. It should not be Tyreek George. I'm sorry. George ain't no striker. So you got to stop playing George as a 9. But this is my team. Sanchez in goal, Chalobah, Tosin, Cucurella. Midfield, I went with James and Gusto. Again, this is the shape off the ball. On the ball, it's going to be it's going to be more of a 4-3-3 with James, Enzo, Caicedo midfield, Gusto, moving down to right back. And you're going to have a flat back 4, 3 midfielders, Palmer on the right wing, Neto on the left wing, and Joao Pedro up front. But off the, on the ball, I expect a similar shape. See, when Gusto didn't play against Brentford, I kind of figured, okay, you know what? Maresca is probably resting his big boys for this game. Yes, he played Enzo and Caicedo, but fam, we don't have a choice. You understand what I mean? Enzo didn't go to international duty, so it just made more sense. Caicedo, Mr. Durable, reliable, gives you an 8 out of 10 every single game. Just made sense to play Caicedo in that midfield. You saw the goal he scored as well. banger off a goal. So Enzo gonna be fresh, and I think Enzo is gonna relish this opportunity again because of all these midfielders. Enzo has been here when we played, that Champions League against Dortmund. He bossed it against Jude Bellingham. Yeah, the away, fixture when we lost 1-0, but Enzo is made for moments like this. And when you see this team, a lot of these guys tend to step up when it's the big games. The big stage, you're going to see Neto be industrious. I think Neto is going to be dangerous as well. He's going to play on that side where Neto is going to be on the side. Who's going to be on that side? Olise is going to be on that side. So you're going to have Olise having to, maybe help back with defensive responsibility. Or if Olise leaves a lot of space, I think Neto is going to be ready to exploit that. I went with Cucurella on the left center back position because I think our build-up play will just be a bit more natural. Trying to see Chalobah build up from the left, bro, it's not natural. It just doesn't feel right. It doesn't move right. So having that left foot on that side, you're able to play the ball in between the lines, down the line. Cucurella can find Caicedo. They can form that triangle over there with Neto. It just will flow a lot better. Reece James will give his body in midfield. Caicedo, James, listen, we saw this against PSG, and they absolutely bodied that PSG midfield of Vitinha, Ruiz, and what was his name? Can't even remember the last guy's name. But my point is, that's a solid base. That's a solid foundation. When we've played European teams that don't really have that physicality, you can see James, Caicedo be more dominant. They can be bullies. I think we would have the physical edge. We would have the quality to be able to hurt this Bayern team as well. I'm expecting Tosin, especially with Kane being the one who's starting. It will be very interesting if this is the game Bayern decided to spawn Jackson out instead of Kane, but it's not going to happen, is it? I expect Tosin to have a much easier time against Kane than Sade. Sade will run behind you. Kane, he ain't got the pace to be beating Tosin. So Kane is going to do the whole, drop deep, link up, try to be creative and still try to crush the box. That's where Tosin has to be on it. Tosin has to be aerially dominant against Kane. There's no reason Tosin shouldn't be winning his aerial duels against Harry Kane. This should be a lot more of a comfortable matchup because what Kane is going to do is in front of you, but it's the quality that he's going to hurt you with those passes. How is he going to find Olise's, your Luis Diaz's, your Gnabry's? That's the problem. When Kane has the runners off of him, bro, he's one of the most dangerous players on the pitch. So as long as whenever Kane drops deep, Caicedo, James put a stop to that bullshit before it happens, we should be calm. But this should be a game where Tosin, listen, aerial duels, you got to eat them shits up. Chalobah, aerial duels, handle business. You understand what I mean? So this is my predicted 11. I think Gusto is going to be more of the right winger, even though, again, off the ball, he's going to be playing right back. But I think when we're on the ball, Gusto is going to give us that whiff on that side. Neto, whiffed on the left. Caicedo, Enzo, Palmer, have space in those central areas. Just playing those balls to Joao Pedro. And Joao Pedro, his job in this game is going to have to be given us options. You got to occupy those defenders. If you're dropping deep, Gusto, make sure you're holding the whiff. Palmer, are you running off Joao Pedro? But when Palmer has played with Joao Pedro, you just see more of an opening in midfield because I think Pedro knows once Palmer picks up those balls in midfield, he can make the run and Palmer can find him with any kind of pass. Same with Enzo. So, yeah, he's going to drop deep a bit, but I'm expecting him to be kind of on the shoulder a little bit, knowing once Palmer picks up the ball in these areas, bro, you got to start making those runs. Once Enzo picks up the ball, you got to start making those runs. And I think, Neto on that side is definitely going to help Cucurella a lot against Olise. I think this is a very safe starting 11 for your first game back. we know Maresca could be very pragmatic at times. So I would not be surprised if it wheels, this starting 11 out, because again, I think this gives us a bit more of a better balance. It gives us a better chance of getting something from this Bayern game. You have more defenders on the pitch. You also have more numbers in midfield. You have the width, and I think this should be able to get us a result out of Germany. My predicted score, I have 3 scores. I can't pick one. Either Chelsea win this game 2-1. If it's going to be a draw, I believe it's going to be a 2-2. Or I think Chelsea win this game 3-1. Yeah, it sounds crazy. It might sound fugazi, but we have the quality to hurt this Bayern team. This team literally, bar Chalobah, was the same team that bodied PSG off the pitch. Literally. You take out Chalobah, you bring in Colwell, and this was literally the team that just dropped a masterclass. Yes, Colwell being out has really heavily impacted our play, but again, we're still not conceding a lot of goals. We've conceded 2 goals this season in 4 games. We're still unbeaten. I think these guys will have enough to do the job. So again, for me, it's either going to be a 2-1 win Chelsea, 2-2, or a 3-1 Chelsea. That's my predicted 11. Let me know how you guys feel about the starting 11. What changes would you make in the comments? What do you think, Maresca is going to make? What will be your starting 11? I know people want to see, Esteval in this team, or even if not Esteval, I could see people wanted to see more of a Gusto out, Neto on that side, maybe a Garnacho playing against this Bayern high line. You just don't know. But again, having Garnacho coming off the bench probably gives you a better option to get more out of him. We all know Garnacho as a starter doesn't really hit the same notes as an option off the bench. But in this game, if you're getting a bit tired, you can bring Gittins in, who has not looked great in the last couple of games, but this is Champions League. This is against a team that he's played and has the experience against, so it could be one of those games that, Chelsea, you're winning. He comes in and then he builds on that momentum, in the second half. You could bring in Gu if, Joao Pedro is not having a good game and you still want that physicality up front. You can make these changes. You can bring Esteval. So tomorrow, we should have options on the bench where if it's not going according to plan, you could bring Santos in this game. You could bring options, So that's my predicted 11, people. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.